And let's shift our focus to wide receiver, though. Talked a lot about running backs. This wide receiver class better than the running back class, hands down, at least in my opinion. You have sort of this big two, at least, with Marvin Harrison and Malik Nabers, but then some people will throw Rome Odunze in there too as sort of a big three. I've seen that more so with draft scouts, the more traditional draft scouts than the fantasy folks, but a lot of people love Rome Odunze. I like Rome Odunze too. I just don't think that he's necessarily in the same tier as those other guys. Where are you at with Odunze? Do you think that he is as special, as good as a Malik Nabers or Marvin Harrison?
I think there's a clear delineation between those top two guys and then Rome Odunze. But I still like him a lot. I like Rome a lot. I think if you go back and like try to maybe compare him to last season's class, like I put him ahead of JSN. Yeah. And so it's like one of my favorite things that I heard throughout this process is that like Rome Odunze isn't bad. Like he's not your traditional third wide receiver in a draft class. He's just really unlucky that he's got these two great prospects ahead of him. And they truly are. But I think Rome's going to be a top 12 pick. I think it's it's so hard when I try to do this. It's so hard to contextualize observations on film to like just to say it into an audio podcast. So like I'll try to like reference the data that supports the observations. With Rome Odunze, I love his hands. Receivers with bad hands, it pisses me off. Like that's part of your job description, and you like receiver, and you can't do it. So I love it. He has one of the lowest drop rates while having one of the higher contested catch rates and yards per route run. So it's just like he's doing all this while having to make more challenging catches downfield. And that offense, I know we like to talk about how the offense was great and it put up so many points. A lot of that is on him. A lot of that is on Rome Odunze. I went into one of the first players I watched for this whole class was Michael Penix because he seems to be someone that's very vexing. And I wasn't into Michael Penix. A lot of what he's doing is just kind of like chucking it up off his back foot, and Rome Odunze and the other receivers on this team sort of saving him with winning jump balls and having to adjust. And he did a lot of like what I saw, and I hate to do this to myself, a lot of what I saw from Tua Tagovailoa this year, where a ball gets underthrown, Tyreek has to adjust, come back to it, or go in a different direction. Rome Odunze is really good at that. And it's not just like the deep balls where he's adjusting. It's even on just really short stuff where it'll be a fade. And he knows how to kind of manipulate the DB and slow down his feet, take smaller steps so that at the last second he can sort of like jump out and go after the ball. It really does look like a center fielder who's just able to track the ball really well. One of the things that I hear about is like he can't separate. He separates just fine. This reminds me a lot of the same stuff that we talked about with Drake London back when he was coming out. And so I see like a few different, comps for him for Odunze. He's a little bit bigger, but I'd say he's really similar to Devontae Adams. And before anyone freaks out, like I'm not saying he's going to be consistently top 5 wide receiver in the NFL every single season, but he does a lot of the same things that Devontae does while also not being the most athletically gifted.
Yes.
So he has to run his routes in a very smart manner. And so like, that's the kind of thing that I see that I'm like, okay, he's not quite as dynamic and explosive as Malik Nabers. And, he doesn't have the same, just special God-given ability that Marvin Harrison Jr. has, but Rome Odunze is still a really, really good player.
Yeah. What's funny is you brought up Drake London. That's one of the 3 comps that my model spit out for Rome Odunze. Another one was his bad one. I like to, it's nice whenever there's like, you could see the range of outcomes here. What his bad one was Michael Floyd. Okay. Let's just throw that out there.
Okay.
And let folks know that there are not perfect comps for him like there are for Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers. The top one though is DeAndre Hopkins for Rome Odunze.
Yeah. And I see that.
And again, it goes back to it's not like he's this like overly athletic separator, but he knows how to manipulate his body in ways to create that separation.